while I'm sad. You've been out all night, know you've been bad. Don't tell me different, know it's a lie. Come to me, honey, see how I cry.
Hello, you're watching The Recovery Show with Bernie Z. That's me. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that I've learned over the last few years about addiction, but also something that's very key, and that is a lot of times people look at addiction, compulsive gambling in particular, they look at it as a specific thing, as in going to the casinos gambling but scratch outs aren't, or some things are gambling but others aren't because there's no money involved. And when I wrote my book, How to Win It's a Higher Roller While Losing Your Shirt, one of the things I wanted to point out in that is that, well, doing the background on myself and trying to figure out exactly when it all started and how everything worked out, I discovered something unusual, and that is in 3rd and 4th grade, I used to play marbles on the playground. But when you play marbles, usually it's a friendly game. Back then, it was understood that if you won marbles during the week, you kept them during the week, but on Friday, after all the games were done, you gave them back. I didn't like doing that. I thought if I won them, I won them. Now, when I lost, I wanted them back. That traced me back to the gambling idea that even though that wasn't money or anything like that, that was still gambling. Cheating on tests, that's a form of gambling. Almost anything, if you look at it hard enough, you can find where there might be a component that if it's done in certain ways, it can be gambling. I try to avoid one word or one phrase that for a long time I used all the time, but because of the nature of the implication, I've decided not to use it. A lot of people, I know it's not a big deal to say, I bet. But for me it is. Because when I do that, that tells me I'm thinking back to gambling. Things like, I bet you this, or I bet you that, or I bet this happens, or that happens. Those are things that make me remember my betting days. And my betting days, for me, were scratch-off tickets. Before that, it was trying to do better than somebody else at something. I worked in a camp, and it was an eating contest. I was camp counselor for a summer, and all 8 weeks of the camp, the bottomless pit award went to, that's right, me. And I had anywhere from 10 to 12 kids in my cabin. And it was served family style, so you'd have food come out. My 12 guys at the table, 12 young men at the table that were growing could not keep up with me combined. I could sit down and out-eat 10 to 12 young 12, 13, 14-year-olds, and in some cases 7 and 8-year-olds. I could also out-eat almost every staff member. Well, actually, every staff member, I shouldn't say almost. I did, because yes, every week of that 8 weeks, I won the bottomless pit competition. And I was rather proud of it, even though it made me the fat guy I am today. But that was an addiction to food, but it was also a gambling process. I did that when I was still studying in college early on. We would have a contest to see who could drink the most pop at a time, or who could eat the most pizza. A couple of times it was who could drink a beer faster. Nowadays, I don't drink. Not consistently. I might once in a while, in a blue moon, have a beer with somebody. Things like that. But I avoid alcohol. I avoid the other things. Because for me, that's just another addiction to get into. It's not a good one. Now, there are good addictions in my eyes, and one of them is breathing. I tend to like breathing. Having asthma, I now understand that that's even more important, because on occasion I have problems where I'm wheezing a lot, or where I can't catch my breath, and I've done nothing to trigger it that I know of. But that's the thing I'm trying to get at, is that there are so many things that we do nowadays that we wouldn't consider gambling. Now, here in the state of Michigan, they've made it legal to do pretty much every form of gambling that is documented as gambling, which really is kind of a scary thing. One of the few states that allows online betting or online gambling. You're now seeing things with FanDuel and the other ones where they're saying it's not gambling. Well, yeah, it is. The thing is, anytime you advertise you can win millions, you're gambling. Publishers Clearinghouse is something that I don't get it anymore in mail, but a lot of it is because I simply started sending it back to them. I've had people call and want me to enter a contest. I'm a fan of Ben Carson, and they had a thing. Well, if you donate this much, we'll put you into a raffle to meet with Ben Carson. I can't do that because that's gambling. So if I were to donate to the campaign, which at the moment I can't afford to do, but if I could, I would. But I wouldn't do it to win a time with him. And I sent the message to his campaign and said, I can't do that. It's something that violates my sobriety. I consider it gambling. So that's something to look at. What is gambling? And I want people to think about that for the next week or so. Just think about it. Next week, I want to talk to you about exactly what is it that it is about gambling that hooks us. And I want you to look back at episode 2 where I use my poem and think about things. Here are some things to think about. 1, is there anything that you do to the point where you miss out time with your family or anything like that, or that causes you grief at some point or another, depending on how much you do it? And then take that thing, whether it be eating, whether it be going to movies, whether it be fast food, whether it be gambling, whether it be any number of things, being overly clean, speed, driving, that kind of things. Take a look at them, and take a look at them in respect to the poem of Addiction and Recovery in 5 short chapters. I think what you'll find is that over time you learn that there are things that fit into that aren't just gambling, they aren't just pills, they aren't just alcohol. The things we know to be addictions are also things that at one time or another may not have been considered addictions. And for people who are not an addict but have compulsive behaviors or behaviors that they do all the time, that's something to consider, because it's very likely that is the crux of a problem that's interfering with something. I had communication problems with my ex-wife. Now, I can say that I used the gambling to avoid that argumentativeness, and that'd be true. But the problems with my ex-wife were also an addiction, because that's what I was used to. The relationship I was used to was something that avoiding it was something I wanted to do. So the avoidance itself, in some respects, I can look at that poem and I can say, that fits into that too. Because there were times I would stop myself in the early days fighting with her and try to resolve things, because I knew that it would get to a point. Now, towards the end, I was getting kicked out of the house overnight and stuff with nothing but the car I had and the clothes I had on my back, and having to go to work the next day. And that happened over the years of the marriage. And it was kind of a mutual thing, but I would sleep in rest areas, and that's not good. But that's what happens with addictions. You end up having something happen that is not healthy. So with that, I'm going to end today's episode a wee bit short. I apologize for the lighting. It's not quite there yet, and neither is the office. So I'm going to cut short and start working on the office. But for today, think about the things you do that affect your life in other ways. And if you're interested, Look me up online, Bernard Zeitler, and you will find books on Amazon. I have 5 of them with addiction, 2 with Bible studies, and 1 that is purely my humor. And I'll leave the show on this note. I had a friend that got pulled over by the cops. Now, that friend, I didn't understand why he got pulled over. He wasn't leaving. He wasn't doing anything wrong. I mean, as far as I know, as long as you're not breaking any laws, there's no problem with having a white cane with a red tip, is there? Anyway, talk to you another time. Thanks. Bye.
While I'm sad, you've been out all night, know you've been bad.